WQUD, Erie Quad Cities. This is the Uncle Tim Show. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. And I've got a special guest in the studio, one that's been here before. I've got Gary Whitebread. Gary, welcome back to the WQUD studio. Say hello.
Thanks.
Yes. So, well, you folks might remember Gary being in the studio, and we're talking about, it's been a while. We talked about homing pigeons, and like I was telling Gary, Mike Rowe might have his dirty jobs segments, but I have my interesting job interviews. And the ratings were so spectacular after the pigeon interview, we had to bring Gary back. So, hey, thanks for making the Uncle Tim Show ratings skyrocket, Gary.
Anything to help you, buddy.
Oh, let's just take a deep breath and have a little bit of fun here. I'll give a little bit of background before we get started. The radio station, WQUD, the big blower here in downtown Erie, brought Gary and I a lot closer together. We're both big fans of music, and we do kid around a lot. But I do have to say, in all sincerity, that I do respect and admire you, Gary, as a human being, and I love the profession that you chose. And will that compliment get me a drink after the show?
Maybe if somebody comes and steals your tower and you close down early.
Hell, you never know. You never know what might happen. I was always going to be a veterinarian, and that's no joke. In middle school, I wrote a paper. We were asked to write a paper on what you want to be when you grow up, and I was complimented by the teacher, but I never followed through. I've got my wife's uncle and her brother that were veterinarians, and I know you. So, and I think you know Mrs. Uncle Tim's uncle, Gene, and his brother from Winnebago there, from your veterinary days?
Yeah, both wonderful guys. Wonderful guys.
Okay, well, we are here tonight to dispel any myths and rumors about the profession and hear a few stories. And I know Gary's got some. Hey, Gary, who you got listening tonight? Let's have a few shout-outs to some special people.
Oh, I'm good. You're going to have more listeners tonight because I made a lot of people try to tune in.
Well, good. They'll get hooked on the show.
I got my wife, Carla, and my daughter, Amy, and my grandkids, my son, Zach, my agent, Rocky, both my brothers, Den and Larry, my college buddy, Beetle, who lives all the way into Lyle, my big farmer buddy, Randall, and Tim Dunphy in Arizona, and one of my old pharmaceutical reps that lives down in Geneseo, Barney.
Well, you got some special people listening tonight, and even though I wasn't going to ask this, I do want to say, when did you decide you wanted to get into the veterinary business? Did you know in high school?
I did not. I'm not one of those guys, there was never an epiphany that I wanted to be a vet. I always enjoyed working outside, and when I was a junior in college, I got a degree in biochemistry. My junior year, I went to the lab and I did lab work for Amico company, and I'd go in and I have no clue what it was like going on outside. So I said, that's not for me. I'd worked on farms. I'd worked for the railroad. I was kind of an outside guy. And I remember when I was like 11, I had a pigeon with a broken leg, and I took it over to Dr. Poppenhaus in Sterling, and he splinted it, and I worked for farmers, and the vets would come out and work on their animals. I go, I think I would like that. I think I was more interested in the large animal part than the small animal part, but that's in my senior year of school. I applied to vet school, and I was lucky enough to get in.
And you mostly dealt with large animals?
Mostly large animals.
I don't know, what made you pick large over small?
I don't really know. My favorite animals are cows and cats, and I don't really know that combination, but that's what I like to work on.
That sounds like a song.
Yeah, a country song.
Yeah, well, let's just go into maybe just open up with a story. You dealt mostly with large animals. Can you recall sometime in your career a particularly heartwarming or touching story about how you saved somebody's animal, pet?
Well, my first year out of school, I got hired in Elizabeth, Illinois. In my very first month, this woman called in and she had, her dog wasn't doing very well. And I talked to my partner and she goes, she's an older widow woman. She doesn't really like to drive. And she lived between Elizabeth and Galena. And I said, well, so I called her up and I said, I got a farm call, like right out in your neighborhood. I said, I'll go do my farm call and then I'll stop and I'll look at your dog. So I stopped and looked at this dog, and it's the first time I had ever met her again. I was only like a month out of school. And her name was Mrs. Hickman, and she was a widow woman, and she said, my dog's having problems doing number 1 and number 2, quote her. So I said, okay. I said, where's your dog? Well, he was in the backyard. So I walked around and looked at this dog, and his name was Husky, and Husky, he was about an 8 or 9 year old mixed breed dog, male dog. And he weighed about 90 pounds when he should have been like 30. So he was basically a basketball with legs. And I said, okay, I'll examine him. So I examined him, and I could tell that he had a bunch of little tumors around his rectum. He had an enlarged prostate. And I listened to his heart, and his heart was going like a freight train. And I told her, she had never met me, and I was a month out of school, and she'd never met me. And I said, well, there's only one cure for this. He has to be neutered for that. But I said, he's overweight, he's old, and he's got a bad heart. I said, he's probably not going to survive the surgery, but that's his only cure. And she kind of teared up and looked at me, and she goes, well, let me think about it. So she waited a couple days, and she called up, and she told me that, well, I've been praying on it, and even though I just met you, I said, I want you to do the surgery on him. So I said, okay. So she brought the dog in, and I did the surgery, and everything went fine. Everything went fine. He went home, and 2 weeks later, she brought him back in, and good old Husky, he'd read the book. His tumors were shrinking up. His prostate got smaller. His heart rate was still going like a freight train, but he survived, and he went on to live 3 or 4 more years.
Was there a diet involved there?
There was not a diet involved. That was her pet. That was her only companion, and I wasn't going to walk down there. But about a year later, my daughter was born, and I came home, and there was a package on my door, and it was from Mrs. Hickman and Husky, and she had knitted a baby blanket for my daughter, and I still have that baby blanket in her baby stuff after all these years. But she had enough faith in me, and it could have turned out horrible, but it turned out pretty good.
Did you ever work for trade? I'll do this for you if you'll do this for me, or was it? I'm sure that you got stiffed by people from time to time.
Well, yeah, that happened. There was a couple places that maybe your definition of trade and my definition of trade might be 2 different things. I would say trade services, yeah, but we won't go into that.
Okay.
That's the X-rated part.
X-rated. We can't be doing that. Yeah. You got a lot of pets yourself. What do you got at your place up there in Mount Carroll?
Well, right now there's 4 dogs. 3 of them are my wife's. 1 of them's mine. She has 4 horses. None of them are mine. Have 4 cats. 3 of them are mine and 1's hers. She has 16 chickens, and I have about 120 pigeons.
That is a zoo.
That is a zoo.
I do believe it's going to be 5 horses before too long, or not?
Don't go there.
Okay.
That's in the summer when, she does have a bred mare.
Okay. So I don't know if I should tell this funny story. You told me once that I'm going to tell it anyway. I asked what you were up to, and you happened to mention that your wife was taking a horse to get a MRI, I believe, up in Milwaukee or somewhere.
Somewhere.
And so I just said, gee, Gary, how much does an MRI on a horse cost? And you said...
I said, I don't want to know. I don't ask her. It comes out of her own banking account. We'll probably get divorced if I knew what it was.
All right. Carla, she's a good woman, though. She puts up with you.
Oh, yeah.
I know Amy, your daughter, clued me in on this one. I was going to ask you if you ever brought home any of other people's pets. Maybe they didn't want them anymore.
Yeah, I got a lot of my animals were that way, but the one in particular, somebody brought a tarantula in, and my buddy Rocky, who's been my friend forever, he had a tarantula, and his tarantula's name was Jack Webb, which I thought was a perfect name for it. Anyway, I brought this tarantula home, and I didn't know anything about tarantulas, but you fed it crickets. So one day, I remember Amy kept saying, the crickets are still in there. They're multiplying. So we took the lid off, and I took a smell, and I go, oh, the tarantula had passed on. That's why it wasn't eating any crickets, and it did stink.
How long did you have a tarantula?
I can't remember, but I think it was dead probably maybe for a couple of weeks
before
we discovered it.
The crickets were very, very happy.
Yeah.
Hey, Gary, how hard is it to become a vet? What do you got to go through schooling-wise?
Schooling-wise, I obviously went to high school. Then I had 4 years of college. I got a degree in biochemistry, and then you had 4 years of vet school. So basically, you got 16 years in there.
I think it's harder to become a vet. I think I've read than it is to become a MD or not.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, it's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot of schooling, though. And by the way, my class was better than yours at Newman Central.
That's debatable.
Okay, how'd you wind up? How'd you decide on Mount Carroll?
I really didn't. Well, I ended up in Mount Carroll when I graduated. I grew up in Rock Falls, Illinois, and there was a job opening in Elizabeth in Joe Davis County, and I drove up there, and I had never really been past Chadwick. So I'm driving up there, and I'm driving through Mount Carroll, and then I get up north of Mount Carroll, and I'm coming into Elizabeth, and I grew up in the flatlands, and you get up there, and there's hills and beautiful valleys and trees and livestock everywhere. And I said, wow, I hope I get offered this job. And I did. The best thing that happened to me.
So,
and then in mid-1979, the vets in Mount Carroll, they decided they wanted to retire. So they came up to us to see if we wanted to buy their practice out. And I loved Elizabeth. I really didn't want to leave there. My wife and I there was people my age there. I played baseball. I was at a fire department, did a lot of things, but I was also I had a 2-year-old daughter, a pregnant wife, and I was making $12,000 a year. So I decided maybe if I moved down, maybe I might make $20,000 a year. So I ended up moving to Mount Carroll.
Something had to give there.
Yeah.
So you had a partner?
Had a partner, Dr. Summers.
The whole time?
The whole time. We worked together in Elizabeth, and then I moved down. And then we hired another vet that was supposed to be shared between us, but he ended up keeping that vet most of the time. For 2 years, I was on call 24/7 every day for 2 years. I was burnt.
Yeah, you like I said, you've spent some all-nighters out there and being on call. That's a lot of work. On call, how often?
I was on 2 years straight, every day.
Wearing like a pager back in those days, probably, right?
Well, back in those days, it really sucked because you stayed home. When you were on call, you stayed home because the phone was there. One of the best things that ever happened was call forwarding. So I could actually maybe go over to the neighbor's house and forward my calls to there. So I didn't have to just stay home all the time to answer the phone.
You ever work on any exotic or wildlife, deer, that kind of thing?
Did some deer, had a guy that raised some deer down around Thompson. I delivered some fawns for him. I did have one ostrich. A guy just north of town, a guy called and said, I got this ostrich and it can't really move and it's sick. And I said, I don't. And it was like in the winter time. And I said, I really don't know anything about ostriches, but I said, I'll come look. So I came look, and I mean, it couldn't pick its head up or nothing. And I said, I don't know anything about ostrich, but I know when something's going to die, and it's going to die. And I hardly got that out of my mouth, and it died.
He called a little bit too late.
What was going on there? He never gave that. It's a bird, and he never gave it any grit. So it was impacted from its food, and it couldn't grind its food up. So, yeah. That was my big exotic.
That's
animal.
exotic. How about llamas?
Actually, the woman vet that I ended up selling my practice to, she knew quite a bit about llamas, and we did. That was like a pyramid scheme that was going on for a while. And
everybody wanted
oh,
llamas?
yeah, everybody wanted llamas. Buy a llama, breed the llama, and then everybody's going to make a lot of money when you sell the babies. But she taught me a few things. We got pretty good at neutering them.
That looks good on the resume.
Oh yeah, yeah, for my next job.
You know, I read that about 80% of vets are women, and you said even more?
Pretty much. When I graduated in 1976, we were probably, I think there was 120 in my class. We probably had 15 women. And now it's just the opposite. It's probably 15 men.
Huh.
And the biggest thing of that is, and this might not be politically correct, but being a veterinarian anymore is not a primary breadwinner's job. The money isn't there.
Really?
Yes.
Is there a glut?
No, there's not a glut. There's a shortage. I mean, salaries are coming up. I mean, when I graduated, had 4 years of college and 4 years of vet school. And when I got out, I mean, I worked a lot of jobs making money to pay for my schooling. When I got out of school after 8 years, I was $7,500 in debt, but I was also making $11,000 a year. So that was like 2/3 of a year's salary. I mean, these kids coming out today are $150,000, $250,000 in debt. And that's like buying a house. They're coming out owning a house, having to pay for a house, and they don't have a house. Yeah.
Pretty brutal. So how about surgery? You did a lot of surgery over the years? We did surgery.
I mean, we were a small town, mixed animal practice. I mean, we did neutering, spays, remove tumors, sutured dogs up that got cut or hit. Farm dogs would get caught by barbed wire, and we'd suture them up and stuff. But we did, if you had a broken leg and it wasn't, sticking out of the skin or something, we could put a splint on it. We did that. But most of the time we had a good working relationship with Alpine Vet Clinic in Rockford and Kimberly Crest in Quad Cities. We would refer them.
Okay, I know Kimberly Crest. And as long as we're talking about surgery, and how about, I actually played that Neil Ford, the animal doctor, the other night about an animal coming in and injured. And I mean, you probably have been bit and scratched and a few other things. Animals, I've been in vet clinics where their animals know what's going on and they don't like it.
They don't like it, but I've been scratched a little bit. I haven't ever really been seriously bit by a dog. I do probably, that's being a large animal vet. That's one of the things, my vet buddy up in Galena, we got Dr. Schaefer, we started at the same time. And I told him we were retiring. I wanted to retire because every time I went out and started working cattle, I was wondering, is today the day I'm going to get hurt bad enough that it'll affect my retirement? And when you start thinking like that, you have to, it's time to quit.
It's time to quit.
To quit. So my worst injury that ever happened to me was on Christmas Eve. And I went out, this cow had something sticking out of it that wasn't supposed to be sticking out of it.
Ooh, I hate it when that happens.
And yeah. So anyway, they had this cow in the chute, and for somehow that cow took her head and hit the handle that released herself. So she released herself. She went out, turned around, ran down the alley, and literally jumped through the barn window. And the guy's truck was parked outside there. So it landed on the truck. But the good news or the bad news is it was a fenced-in area. So they went out there and got that cow back in. And when they brought her back in the alley, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And she took me, she got me down, stood on my chest, and was just beating me with her head. And they finally got her off of me, and I got up, and I go, oh, God, I got broken ribs. But they caught her back in, and I shoved that thing back in her and stitched her up. And the next day was Christmas Day, and I went down to my parents. I mean, I was white as a sheet. But I kept working.
That's pretty funny. Amy just texted me about those broken ribs. Boy, I'll tell you what, I've had a few myself, and those are brutal. There's not much you can do.
The good news about that is the farmer's wife, she made fantastic cinnamon buns, and every Christmas day till they finally sold their cows, she would bring me a dozen of these buns.
Was it worth a broken rib?
No, they were good, but I was hurt.
All right. I wrote this note down here because I don't know the difference. What's the difference between a VMD and a DVM?
If you graduate, and I don't hold me to this, but if you graduate, I do believe, from Penn State Vet School, you're a veterinary medical doctor, and the rest of the country, you're a doctor of veterinary medicine. That's the only difference.
And if you graduate from Penn State, you're also got a mountain of debt, right?
Yeah. Well, anywhere now.
All right. What do you do when somebody can't pay, and they call you up and they tell? Are they up front with you? Hey, I haven't got any money, but I got some sick animals or something like that.
That happens quite a bit, and the biggest thing is usually at night on emergency calls. They'll come in, and they're injured, so you have to see them. But we donated a lot. Most vet practices around here end up donating a lot, and what we would do if people come in and they don't really have, the money for medicine or something. A lot of our clients were good, if their dog passed or something, and they had leftover food or leftover medicine, they would bring it in. I mean, we couldn't resell it. We'd bring it in and we'd keep it. And then if somebody that needed some help, we would give that to them to help them. But,
all right. I'm going to lump this next question together. I'm going to ask you about maybe the saddest situation or the most challenging, toughest situation.
the hardest thing to deal with is when something routine goes wrong. Like, you bring your animal in for a normal castration or a spay and they die. I mean, that's a very difficult thing to deal with. Maybe you vaccinated the dog and the next day they go and the dog doesn't wake up. I can tell you the good news about that is it only happened a few times, but the one that really sticks in my head is a friend of my daughter went to high school with her, and all he wanted was a bulldog. That's all he wanted was a bulldog. And he was about 22, and he was a friend of my daughter's. He's a friend of mine. He was a good kid, and he finally got a bulldog, and he brought it in. I'll tell you about a bulldog. A bulldog is not a dog. That's some kind of man-made freak.
Really?
Yes. I mean, they're ugly, and everybody loves them, but, I mean, they got great personalities. But anyway, he brought this dog in, and I neutered him, and everything went okay. And 2 days later, he called me up, and he said, my dog's having difficulty breathing. I said, bring it right in. He brought it in. It was dead.
On arrival?
Dead on arrival. 2 days post-surgery. So, I mean, he's crying, and I'm crying. And I told him, I said, let me do an autopsy. Usually after surgery, you figure maybe your suture came off and it bled to death internally or something. I did it. There was no blood in there. The lungs, the kidney, the liver, everything in that dog was perfectly normal. I have no reason, or I have no idea why that dog died. And that haunts me to this day.
I've actually heard stories with humans, the same thing.
And yeah, I can't imagine how a human doctor deals with that.
A
routine thing.
My wife's uncle, one of her uncles, routine surgery, died right on the operating table. The doctor just had to go home, just blown away. I mean, so let's see here. What is your weirdest story? You've probably got a couple.
My weirdest story. All right. So, again, my first year out of vet school, when I was Elizabeth, another widow woman, and she only lived 2 blocks from the clinic. And she had this little male dog. I can't remember what his name was. But anyway, she lived 2 blocks from the clinic. She called up and she goes, my dog's got a lump. I said, okay, bring it in. We'll look at it. So she walked to the clinic, brought the dog in. I'm looking all over this dog. I can't find a lump. I said, Dog's acting okay. Go home. I said, we'll see what happens. Next day she calls. Dog's got a lump. Walks to the clinic. I can't find any lump. I said, same thing. We'll see what happens. A couple days went by. I said, oh, good. She calls up. Dog's got a lump. So my partner's there. I said, Jim, I said, I'm only out a couple months here. What am I missing? You look at this dog. So he looks all over this dog. No lump. So a week goes by. Haven't heard from her. My phone rings like at midnight.
Of course.
At midnight. And she calls up. She goes, got the lump. And I said, I had a busy day. I knew I had a busy day the next day. I told her, I said, okay, you bring that dog in first thing in the morning and I'll look at it. And she goes, okay, Dr. Whitebread, if it's still alive, click. So I might as well just got up and went and looked at that dog.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep the whole night worrying about that dog. Even though I knew it wasn't going to die, I was worried about it. So I get up the next morning. I come to the clinic, 7 o'clock. She's sitting out in the parking lot in her car. And she carries the dog in, and there's a lump. I'm ecstatic. There's a lump. I said, you leave the dog here. We'll figure out what this lump is, and we'll go from there. So my partner comes in, and we're looking at it, and we're poking this lump. We're poking it, and it's soft. And we're looking at each other, and he goes, what do you think that is? I go, I don't know. Let's cut into it. So I cut into it, and the smell of urine filled the room. So we looked at each other, and we said, uh-oh. So we anesthetized the dog, opened the dog up, sutured its bladder back together, sutured the dog back together, and then the next day sent the dog home. What was going on, that dog had a herniated bladder. And it was a male dog, and every time she walked it to the clinic, it was a male dog, do what a male dog would do. By the time he got to the clinic, he'd peed on everything. Bladder deflated, couldn't see it.
That's pretty weird.
That's weird. And as, your John Candy thing says, wow, that was close. We can laugh about it now. Everything's all right. But in 44 years, and I'm still maintained my license, that is the one and only herniated bladder I ever saw.
I was going to ask you about that. Could you practice right now? Your license?
Yeah, I still have actually, my license will be up next January, but the last couple of days I've been doing some continuing education, so I may renew. I don't know.
When did you hang it up? What year?
2020.
2020. And every year you got to do something or not?
Every 2 years you got to take 40 hours of continuing education.
Online, maybe?
You can do online or you can do meetings, whatever. The big thing now is, and it's pretty much every profession in this wonderful state of Illinois. Oh, did I say that out loud? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I say it all the time.
I have to take a sexual harassment course, and I have to take opiate addiction course. What that has to do with veterinary medicine, I don't really know, but those are the rules.
Those are the Illinois rules. I suppose every state's different, but you ever practice any other state? Always Illinois.
I got an Iowa license. When we graduated, Iowa had their state test like 2 months before Illinois, and I went over there to practice to make sure I could pass. So I did have an Iowa license, even though I never practiced in Iowa.
All right. I had this question here, but I think we might have just answered it. But you ever come across something new that you'd never seen or heard before? That's kind of that bladder one.
Well, and that's true. That's why I kept practicing, really, because I would go, I don't think there would be a week after all those years, a week go by and I'm going, geez, I haven't seen that before. And I don't know what it would be, but you could say, I guess I haven't seen it all, so I'm going to keep going. And I did.
Did I skip over this most rewarding situation, your best day? What was your best day as a vet? The day you hung it up.
No. Everything happens on holidays. So I don't know, it was my best day, but it was Easter. And this guy named Earl Buckles had 3 nanny goats. And he called me up. It was Sunday morning, and I went over there. He goes, one of them's trying to have its babies. So I went over there, and I went and he had these 3 nanny goats, and probably about as big as this studio. And I go, which one is it? And he goes, this one. I go, well, I said, that one's got a foot sticking out of it over here on this one, and I think that one's going into labor too. So we had three Danny goats there. So I got the first goat. I reached my arm in there, and it was a tangled up mess. I pulled out 3 triplets, or three baby goats.
Your arm has been in a lot of different places.
Yeah, they've been in a lot of places. So I pulled out these, and they were all alive. So then I went over where the foot was sticking out, and I reached in there and felt all around there, and pulled out 3 baby goats. I go, might as well do this last one, see where she is. Reached in there, pulled out 4. I delivered 10 live goats. That guy's herd went from 3 to 13 in about 2 hours. It was amazing.
I hope it was inside where it was fairly warm, because I can imagine that
It was Easter. It was spring, and it was he had it bedded up pretty good and stuff. But yeah, that was.
You ever find yourself out in a frozen pasture pulling a calf or something? Or,
oh yeah, a lot.
Boy, there's a good time for you. I think I'd rather walk on the track all night.
Yeah, well, I did have one regret. But sometimes dairy cow, well, all cows, after they calve, sometimes they will throw their whole uterus out. And I remember one morning, and I hate myself for this. I probably shouldn't even tell the story, but
you already started now.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was like 10 below zero, and I knew this cow was going to be outside, and I literally said to myself, I hope that cow is not alive when I get there. And I got there, and she wasn't. And then I felt bad.
Yeah, that would have been
forever. Because and even if I would have done it under those conditions, she would have probably died anyway. It was bad, but I didn't forgive myself for that. That was
when we were listing all of your zoo animals up there at your place. You didn't say goats, did you?
Didn't say goats.
Goats are cool looking, but they are troublemakers.
Carla drug home a baby goat.
Hey, Carla.
Yeah. She drug home this baby goat, and she brought it in the house. I go, no, we're not having this goat in the house. So she put it in the backyard, and goats cry just like a baby. And this goat was used to be with other goats, so it's in my backyard crying like a baby for like 2 days. And she finally at least agreed we needed to give the goat back to the goat people. She wanted to get more goats. I said, no, we're going to get rid of the goat and be goatless.
Well, you've got enough animals there.
Yeah.
You know, I was telling Gary before we went on the air that I could just picture him up there. The Iditarod race is getting ready to go up in Alaska. Of course, PETA's trying to ruin that too. PETA's trying to rule a lot of things. It's political correctness, but they take good care of the animals up there, and they have veterinarians at stations assessing the teams when they come in. And then at the end of the Iditarod race, there's always a veterinarian award for the best handled, best managed team. I could just see you up there doing that, Gary.
I think not.
Come on. I'll go along with it. I don't like the cold, though. I do not like the cold.
I don't mind the cold.
But I think I'm going to throw it open to, I know you got a story or two you're sitting on over there that you'd like to tell.
Okay, I'll tell you a couple stories. I had when I went up to Elizabeth, I discovered the dairy cow. My senior year of vet school, all my elective courses were on pigs. I wanted to be a pig vet, and then I drove up to Joe Davis County and discovered the dairy cow. So at that time, Joe Davis, between Stevenson and Joe Davis County, they were the top 2 dairy counties in the state of Illinois. And everybody milked 40 to 60 cows, and that was enough then to maintain a family. So had this one farmer, Alvin Otts. He milked like 30 cows, and he lived down this long lane, and he probably had one of the top herds in the county. And every time he had one of his cows calving, he would call. What matter what time of the day, he would call. And you'd go there, he'd have Christian music on in the barn, and he'd be talking nice to his cows and all this stuff.
Does that work? Does music?
Quiet music works.
Okay.
Cows don't like noise. They really don't like noise. So, like when you're working cattle and stuff and you're yelling at them, they don't like that.
They'd like Geo Wolf Saltwater and not Ozzy Osbourne.
They would probably not like Ozzy Osbourne. But anyway, so I go there, And I'm there in the afternoon, and I'm basically holding this calf in because it's coming. And I'm trying to hold it in to pretend like I'm earning my keep, And the calf comes out, and the calf's alive, and the mother's licking the calf. And I looked at Alvin, and I go, Alvin, I said, if you'd wait like another half hour or 45 minutes, most of these cows would have their babies, and you wouldn't have a vet bill. And he looked at me, and he goes, if I waited too long and a calf was dead or I lost a cow, I couldn't live with myself. I said, well, that's why he has one of the best herds in the county.
He calls you beforehand instead of taking the chance.
Instead of being too late. And I always told people I'd never bitched about being too early, but I bitched if I was too late.
Yeah.
But the best part of this story is his wife, Mrs. Otts. She made the best glazed donuts you can imagine. And I swear to God, no matter when he called, she immediately went in and started making donuts because they were always fresh. So she'd always come out and she goes, here, Dr. Whitebread, I got 2 donuts for you. You make sure you take one back and give it to your partner, Jim.
Did you?
Long lane. And I tell you, before I got out of that lane, both those donuts were in me.
Yeah.
And I'd go back the next day and write up the bill, and my partner would come and he goes, where's my donut? And I'm going, you know where the donut is. When he went there, he ate my donut too. So
yeah.
I miss those donuts. Those were donuts.
Some pretty nice people out there. You got to admit, there's more good people
and,
than bad.
I'm telling animal stories, but mostly it was about the people that I got to work with. So what I got two other quick stories. One was when I first got down to Mount Carroll, this King Ranch out of Texas owned about 1,000 acres in Carroll County, and they brought these wild Texas cows up there. And they called me up. I mean, I hadn't met them yet, and it was like spring, like March. And they called up and they said, "Well, we got this cow calving." And I said, "Okay, I'll come out." So I go out and I go in this building, and it's like a 20 by 30 pen, and there's like 6 or 7 cowboys there, and I'm looking at this pen, and it's made out of railroad ties, and it's like 8 feet tall. And I look over and I'm looking at this cow. They had a rope on her head, a rope on every one of her feet, and they had her stretched out. And I looked at them, I go, "You think you got her restrained enough?" And they never said a word to me. So I got in there, got the calf out, and I'm cleaning up, and I say, "Okay, let's let this cow go so she can get up and lick this calf." And they go, "Doc, you better get out of here first." I said, "Okay." So I crawled up over the 8-foot railroad ties, got out, and I watched those cowboys. They started letting one rope at a time, and as soon as they let get that rope off that cow, they bailed out. And they got the last rope off. They got up. She went over. She licked her calf. She looked at me like that. She charged and hit those railroad ties like she was going to bust through them. And then she tried to jump over them. And the fact that I almost soiled myself, she was going to protect that calf no matter what. That was her mission. These crazy Texas cows, they were mamas. And I told those boys, I said, "If you ever call me again, you make sure they're tied up exactly like that."
Wow. Up and darn right mean.
They were insane. They were insane. So I got one other little story on pigs, and this.
I never wanted to work on pigs, but you did.
I did, and so, as I said, I was in Joe Davis County, and then I moved to Carroll County, and I thought Carroll County farther south a little bit more, wasn't as hilly and stuff. But these people called me up. They had some pigs to castrate. And actually, it's about a mile from where my house is right now. And I went there, and I went down. I thought Alvin Otts had a long lane. This was the longest lane I ever had. And I'm down there, and I thought I was in Arkansas. And so I go down there, and, I'm expecting this nice farrowing building and heated and everything. And I said, "I'm here to castrate your pigs." And he said, "Okay, come on." I go, "Where are we going?" And he pointed to this hut about a quarter of a mile away. I said, "Really?" I said, "Okay." So we walked out there, me and two guys, and this guy crawled down in this hut, and he handed up these baby pigs to the other guy, and he held the pigs, and I castrated them, put them back in there with the sow, and he crawls out and he starts walking in the other direction. I go, where are we going now? We're going to that one over there. I said, okay. It ended up being, he had like 8 or 9 of those buildings like that spread out all over this 200 acres. And I get done and I get back in my truck and I'd been there 2 hours. 2 hours.
2 hours of castrating.
And I castrated 40 pigs total about. And my fee at that time was 10 cents a pig. I was there for 2 hours, made $4.
What would the fee be to castrate a pig nowadays?
There's no pigs left in this area. But thank God that guy didn't stay in the pig business too long. But I know he didn't go broke because of his vet bill.
There's a lot of pigs around here, aren't there?
No. In 1998, when the price of hogs went down to $8, it wiped out all my small hog producers. So it's a good thing I wasn't a hog vet because I'd have been out of a job.
You were talking about milking cattle, and my dad used to manage the dairy here in Erie, and there were a lot of people that milked. Is there anybody milking anymore, or are they just big operations? I mean, I don't know anybody around here.
Well, and that's when between the two counties, when I was up there, I mean, when I started, my practice was 90% large animal and 10% small animal. And I probably had, between the two counties, I probably had 70 dairy herds. When I retired, there was 5 left.
Has it all gone big business?
It's all, yeah, a lot of Wisconsin. You know, and as I said, it used to take 40 to 60 cows to support a family now. I mean, I had one farm that put robots in, and that was my best dairy herd. And he put robots in, and one robot would milk 60 cows. So he had 180 cows. That was my biggest herd. Like with Wisconsin, there's thousands.
That's what everybody's doing now, robots.
Yeah.
So you're still bound to be there, though, when you're milking cows.
Yeah, I have nothing but respect for the dairy.
That is hard, yeah.
That's 2 times a day. Some of them are doing 3 times a day, every day, no days off. Yeah, I salute the dairy farmer. I salute the dairy farmer.
And you even salute the dairy farmer when you're getting kicked by a cow, right?
And I've been kicked.
So
I've been kicked.
Well, you know, I love hearing these stories. Anything else you want to talk about?
Proper communication.
I think that was a note here that I must have missed. Okay, what do you mean?
The importance of proper communication. Again, phone rang about midnight, and these people they lived on the other side of Lanark. They were about 20 miles away, and they called and said, "Our ewe just had babies, got twins, and she can't get up." I said, "Okay." So I'm asking them a bunch of questions. You know, are the twins alive? Did you help deliver the lambs? Was she sick before this? Was she eating before this? You know, all the typical questions that you're asked, because, you know, I'm laying in bed. I really don't want to go. And so anyway, they go, no, I can't get up. I said, oh, okay. So I get up, I drive over there, and I get there, and the father and the daughter are outside the barn waiting for me, and the daughter was kind of a mentally handicapped girl. She was about 17. She was a sweetheart. You know, she come up to me and she goes, "Dr. Whitebread, please save my ewe. This is my favorite ewe. This is my favorite ewe." And in reality, they were all her favorite ewes, but this was really her favorite.
That was the real one.
So I go into the barn, and here's the mother. She's laying on the ewe, and she's talking to it, and she's petting it and saying, "Oh, Dr. Whitebread's here. You're going to be better," and stuff. So I go over and I see these 2 lambs trying to, you know, get to the feeding station. And so I looked at the ewe, and I feel her ears, and her ears are warm, and her eyes are bright, and her color's good. And I'm going, she doesn't really look like sick animal here to me. So I told the missus, I said, "Well, can you get up off of her there so I can look at her udder and see if anything's going on?" So the mother got up, the ewe got up. The lambs went over there and started nursing. And the girl comes over and hugs me and says, "You saved my ewe. You saved my ewe." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I really didn't do anything." And I got back in the truck, and I learned a lesson of proper communication. If somebody calls you and they're telling you that their animal can't get up, you got to ask them if they're laying on it.
Yeah.
True story.
Was this the middle of the night too?
Middle of the night too. I didn't even charge him. For it. I couldn't believe it. But I guarantee you, I always ask if you're laying on them. And like, why'd you ask me that question? I go, experience. That's why.
Experience. Yeah. A question just popped in my head. I've been reading a lot about this deer wasting disease. Do you know much about it? Is that something we got to be scared about? Transmission. I mean, you see any up your way, or you ever seen it?
They're up there. Actually, the DNR right now is up there shooting some deer, and my personal opinion is, I think it's a disease that needs to run its course. If it's going to wipe out 80% of the deer population, let it happen, and then the ones that are still there will be the ones that are resistant to it. So how do they know when they're up there shooting them? If you're not, maybe you shot the one that's the key to immunity. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay.
I mean, there never used to be deer. I mean, now they come back, but it is, similar to mad cow disease, and that's why they're scared about it.
Okay. Yeah, I remember the trouble that caused. Well, if I was an animal, I'd want to live at your house. Yeah, I mean, I want a veterinarian with all of your animals. I think you brought home a stray cat. You still got that cat that you nursed back?
Oh yeah, that's why 3 of them are mine, and pretty much every cat that I have has been a rescue cat. So either they found it in my neighborhood or something like that. And I mean, the one cat, my son and daughter-in-law were driving along the bridge, and they called up. They said, "You got to come over and get this cat." And it was about 8 weeks old, and its foot was smashed, and it had maggots coming out of its foot, and it had diarrhea, and its eyes were crusted shut.
Oh, I feel like eating supper now.
And anyway, I'm looking at it, I go, "Dad, you need to come over here and put this animal down." And I went over there, and that thing came up and started rubbing on my leg and purring, and I'm going, "Oh no!" So I took it as a personal challenge. You should see that cat now.
Does it look like a basketball with legs?
No, it does not look like a basketball with legs, but it likes to eat. But anyway.
Hey, do your birds take much care? You ever have to worry about like bird flu, that kind of stuff, or your
pigeons are immune to that, but they do have their own set of diseases that I vaccinate for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So other members of your club that you'll go and vaccinate their birds,
yes.
that kind of stuff?
I've taught them how to do it themselves.
Okay.
It's not that hard, really.
Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Are you ready for the $64,000 question?
Well, I don't know. I suppose we can.
Do you happen to know anyone, or have you ever given an elephant an enema? I know the answer.
Yeah, I know you know the answer. Well, it actually my brother Den's, my nephew Ben, he worked at the Toledo Zoo with elephants, and he sent me this video of somebody in a hazmat suit, basically giving his elephant an enema, and it was a successful enema because he was covered with what came out of that elephant. And I told him, "You win the poop battle."
Yeah, that's
I've been covered, but I've never been covered like that.
I have seen that video. Yeah, you've been in some strange situations, but not that one. You ever had an urge to work in a zoo as a vet? No,
never did.
So
never did.
All right, is that a wrap?
What I miss and what I don't miss? Yeah.
What do you miss? What don't you miss? Probably middle of the night calls, maybe.
I miss, we talked about animals, but again, we dealt with the people. I miss my small animal clients that was with me for over 30, 40 years, went through numerous generations of dogs and cats. I miss my livestock producers that, we'd go out and we'd work cattle through the chute, and there'd usually be 3 or 4 or 5 guys there, and it was hard work, but we'd laugh and joke and make fun of each other. I miss going to my vet meetings with my fellow vets, and, we compare practices and cases, try to learn from each other. I miss new puppies and kittens coming in, the excitement in the families that they come in and they got a new pet and everything. Everybody loves a kitten and a puppy. Again, I was in Joe Davis County, had a lot of dairy cows. I missed summer evenings going out to treat a down milk fever cow after all the hay in the county had been mowed, and you could put your window down.
What kind of a cow?
A dairy cow.
A milk fever?
A milk fever cow. And what that is an easy explanation is after they calve, they have such a sudden demand for calcium that they take the calcium out of their bloodstream to put it in their udder to make milk. This is the easiest thing. And my job is, it's one of the few miracles that we have. I mean, they're down, and if you don't treat them, they're going to die. So you go out there and you slowly IV a bottle of calcium to them, and they start going like that, and they take a poop, and they get up, and they walk away.
Everything's good.
Everything's good.
We can laugh about it now.
We can laugh about it now. And if they don't poop after you give them that bottle, then something else is wrong with them. I learned that.
I see a second text come in here on my phone. I want to know if you've ever worked with anything aquatic, any kind of fish, anything like that.
No, I never did that. So I miss the sick animals and the injured animals getting better. I miss that. So the things I don't miss is I don't miss the sick animals not getting better. I don't miss telling my farmer that there's nothing else I can do for your.
That's tough.
I mean, that's tough. I miss that. I miss I don't miss, the sorrow and the grief of owners when you're putting their animal to sleep.
That's got to be one of the roughest things.
That was tough. I mean, I cry right with them, but I don't miss having a schedule, and I really don't miss being on call. I was on call for 44 years. The phone was always by my side of the bed, because if the phone rang, it was pretty much me, and I was going to have to go.
Turn your phone on tonight. I'll give you a call about 3 just to give you a taste of it.
Go ahead, because on March 1st of 2020, the phone is no longer by my bed. It's in the other part of the house.
Good idea.
That is something. I was a lucky man. I got to do a job I love, and I got to live in 2 counties that I think are the best counties in the world. My wife loves traveling. I said I'm on vacation every day where I live. I've been extremely lucky.
I got to get up there to see your place. I really respect your profession and all that you've done for those 44 years. And, I know the on-call business is tough, but you have had some rewarding experiences. So I got to get up to your place.
Come on up anytime.
Take that 4-wheeler out there and check out the grounds, check out the animals. Might find a woodcock. You never know.
Maybe.
But, or at least listen to some of those owls up in your neck of the woods. Coyotes, you got a bunch of them?
They were singing tonight, too, the coyotes, right before I went out to drive down here.
Can't get rid of coyotes. You never had to work on one of those, did you?
No, I did not.
They're getting so bold everywhere. Yeah, I don't think you can wipe them out.
Yeah,
so.
They are.
All right, I think...
well, thanks for having me.
Hey, I really appreciate you taking the drive down here and spending a little bit of time with us.
Okay,
so ratings all right through the roof.
Yeah.
Hey,
you'll get your pink slip tomorrow.
Well, I'll come up and take care of some of your animals. You can teach me the profession. All right,
I'll teach you how to clean the pigeon coop out.
All right.
All right.
I love the pigeons. All right. Thanks again for coming down, folks. I'm just going to turn on a song while we reset operations here in the studio, and thanks for tuning in.